Big city mayors are meeting in Ottawa this week, and infrastructure spending is a pressing priority. The federal government has promised $60 billion over the next decade to fix roads, highways, bridges, and other projects. Municipalities are, of course, lining up for their cut. Vancouver is asking for $500 million for social housing and promising to build it on a parcel of city-owned land worth $250 million. How soon does the money need to flow? What projects should be the priority? And with so many cities and towns competing for federal cash, will there be enough to go round? Joining me now, the Mayor of Vancouver, Gregor Robertson, who's in town. So nice to see you face to face.
Good to be here.
You've made a pretty big pitch here in terms of affordable housing and this budget. Explain to people what your proposal was to the federal government and what kind of response you've had.
Right. So I've proposed on Vancouver's behalf that there's a $250 million land base in Vancouver that we are making available, asking for the federal government to put in $500 million and build affordable housing, basically 3,500 units of affordable housing at a time when we have a big affordability crunch in Vancouver, but that extends across the country. Toronto has also put land on the table as well. You're seeing big cities are across the country with an affordable housing crunch and an opportunity to partner with the federal government like never before. This is, it's unprecedented to see cities come forward with offers of public land. Which is expensive to start with in Vancouver. We need the funding from the federal and hopefully the provincial government as well to get the housing built as soon as possible and made available to people on lower incomes and workforce in our cities, new refugees. There's a real pressure on our affordable housing stock right now, and we need more built.
So a couple of things. First of all, that's really a drop in the bucket in terms of the number of people that need affordable housing in your province, right? I mean, it's 116,000 people. I know that's the province and you're in one city, but that's still not probably going to fix the problem.
It won't fix it, but it's making up for lost years because frankly, we've had decades of the federal government not investing significantly in housing. The last decade, the Harper years were really deplorable for getting new housing started. Affordable housing that the federal government was participating in. So we're got to play catch up now, and there's urgency to this. I think we need to get it going soon, and then talk about a longer term program that delivers housing every year on a predictable basis.
This is a big piece of land and it's very valuable, but you think this is the best way to invest in the city? Because you could sell it to private investors, right?
Exactly.
And make a lot more money.
Yeah, you know, my approach, and I think it's well supported, is that we don't sell public assets. We don't sell public land off. We can lease it for the long term, but we keep it as a public asset and get highest and best use for it. In Vancouver, housing is so critically needed. We're growing. Our economy is booming right now and predicted to do so for some years to come. And the shortfall is with housing, affordable housing in the workforce.
So you're able to make this kind of commitment because you're financially doing pretty well.
Exactly.
But not every city is in that kind of position, obviously. So when you all sit down with the Prime Minister and you talk with a variety of ministers that are going to come through the meeting, what do you want to say to them in terms of your message about what you need and what they can contribute financially?
Well, certainly some cities, as you say, have the resources, have a land base, an asset base that we can leverage.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do that to deal with our toughest challenges and deal with homelessness, deal with affordable housing. On the transit front, we have huge needs to deal with the traffic gridlock and people's mobility through our big cities. We're obviously willing to be at that table as well and get the province and the federal government. We can't contribute a third of the funding for these big transit projects. We don't have the fiscal capacity to that. But I think all of us are coming forward saying we can do something. We can make something available from the local government to ensure they get built as a key priority right now. And fortunately, we're hearing good noises back from the federal government. So these are big priorities. They were elected on them. There's now a need to get people to work. Building housing, building transit are important ways to get people to work. Infrastructure is the best investment we can make in getting our economy firing, and I think there's an opportunity here for all of us in a win-win.
You're not the only person I've talked to about the funding formula maybe not working for some. There are premiers that say we can't do one-third, one-third, one-third. That's just not going to work anymore. What do you make sense then that you would come to the table with the money you have, that they would ask for like a per capita contribution? What would you propose to them if you can't do one-third?
Well, the default here that I've talked about anyway in my visits to Ottawa so far with the new government is local government collects about 10% of the overall tax base. That varies from province to province, but in that ballpark. And if we can contribute at that level, certainly it's within our fiscal framework. 1/3 is very difficult.
Yeah,
the challenge also being that currently local governments and cities are maintaining about 60% of the infrastructure. That's just a leftover and something we have to deal with. So we're already strapped. Everyone says they're strapped, but the reality is that the tax base, we're all paying taxes. About half of them go to Ottawa and about 40% go to our provincial governments. And we got to make sure that everyone's contributing at that level that they can, that's within the revenue that they're collecting right now. So I think it's more also about investing forward and making sure that we're giving the economy the boost that it needs, but we're doing it in a way that creates opportunity for many decades to come. This shouldn't be a short-term stimulus piece. I think this government's shown they have the courage to change the paradigm and invest in the longer term for Canada, and we want to see that delivered on the ground in our cities.
Okay, I want to talk about something else that's happening in your city, and that's marijuana. And this is also something that's relevant to this particular government. There are 14 licensed pot shops now that have that could open, I think, as early as next month in Vancouver. So what does the federal government need to think about when they see that opening up in your city? How like, if there's a lesson for them about how that's going to unfold next month?
Well, certainly we're looking forward to new federal regulations and an approach that is legalizing, regulating, and controlling marijuana. That will be welcome for us on the West Coast because we've been living in this vacuum and very unclear federal approach and the courts ruling continually that access has to be provided. So we've taken an approach that we have to regulate the dispensaries. There's about 100 of them in Vancouver right now. We just have to take a pragmatic approach on the ground and deal with proximity to schools and that concern, clustering of these shops in lieu of the lack of federal regulation. So as soon as there is a new comprehensive and sensible approach to this federally, then we can deal with what it looks like on the ground in cities across Canada. That's going to take a long time,
though. You recognize that they're nowhere near starting that.
No, it's early days, and that's why we're carrying forward with our approach to just make sure on the land use side, on the issue of access for kids, which is a big concern in every community. We want to be proactive about that, deal with it, because it's a problem right now, and we're hopeful that there is going to be a new regime in the near term. I think there's signals are being sent. They're going to do a thoughtful engagement on this, and obviously we want to be at the table and make sure it's done well.
One more topic before I let you go, and that's pipelines, because the federal government has now put on these additional conditions onto the Energy East pipeline, which gets a lot of attention and maybe less attention in central Canada anyway, the Trans Mountain extension. You have said that you're against the pipeline. Now with this added layer, this process, the additional greenhouse gas emission evaluation, for instance, have you reconsidered? Have you thought more about whether the project could get off the ground? What's your thoughts?
No, and my opposition, and I'd say more broadly for our region, there's big pushback on it for years now because of the impact not only on the environment but on our economy on the West Coast. Vancouver, the 66,000 tourism jobs, full-time tourism jobs that would be impacted by a spill in our harbor. And we're talking about 7 times the number of oil tankers going right through the harbor around Stanley Park and out past Victoria. So it's potentially disastrous impact on a very successful and diverse economy. Trading that off for some upstream benefit. I'm thankful to see a much more rigorous approach with the NEB. I think Canadians have lost trust with the pipeline review process that we've been through in recent years. And there needs to be a massive overhaul of that. And there needs to be, we need to talk climate change, we need to talk economic impact, and there has to be rigorous reviews for all of these major projects.
But you don't think this one will get approved even if all those things happen, even with these additional consultations, additional requirements? You don't see this happening?
I don't see it happening on that. And that's no surprise on the West Coast. I think the concerns have been very significant for these. And really, if you're just going on a jobs basis, the risk to so many jobs currently on the West Coast that are driving our economy is huge. And there's not, with the West Coast proposals, that's exporting jobs to China, frankly, resources flowing to China and for upgrading and refining there and shipping them back. So I think there are real concerns economically and environmentally that will make sure these don't happen on the West Coast. But overall, the pipeline review process needs a major overhaul, and I'm thankful to see the federal government moving that forward.
Okay, Mayor, we'll leave it there. Nice to see you in person. Appreciate
Good to see you too.
Thank you.